So, today we will start with the new topic, goiter. Shall I continue? So, what is goiter? Goiter is an enlargement of the thyroid gland. It is from the Latin word goiter, which is meaning throat. So, any enlargement of the goiter is known as a thyroid gland known as a goiter. Anatomy already discussed in previous class. The blood supply already discussed. Now this is the both anterior and posterior view of the thyroid gland. You can easily appreciate in posterior view the parathyroid glands, which is important. Now before starting the goiter, I will tell you the relationship of the thyroid and pituitary and hypothalamus. So there is a one mechanism which is called negative feedback mechanism of thyroid gland. Now thyroid gland is directly related to the both hypothalamus and pituitary. Normally what happened, thyroid gland secreted the thyroid hormones. Now in our body, if the sufficient thyroid hormone is present, so hypothalamus will be inactive. So what happened, if there is a insufficient thyroid hormones in our body, both T3 and T4, so hypothalamus sensitize and he will secrete TRH, which will tell the pituitary, anterior pituitary mostly, कि there is a insufficient of thyroid hormone. So now anterior pituitary hormones release the TSH, which will tell the thyroid to secrete more thyroid hormones. So now this is the negative feedback mechanism, which is directly related to the peripheral circulation of T3 and T4. If there is a decrease in T3, T4, hypothalamus tell anterior pituitary to release TRH. Now TRH will tell anterior pituitary to So from the anterior pituitary, TSH is released and it goes into the thyroid, which will secrete the thyroid hormones. Clear? Now we will start with the classification of the classification of the thyroid swelling or classification of the goiter. Now the main four category of the goiter is thyroid swelling is simple goiter, toxic goiter, neoplastic and inflammatory. Now the simple goiter, the name itself, it is a simple, which means it is non-toxic. So now simple is again divided into two category. First is physiological, first is diffuse hyperplastic and second is multinodular goiter. Now there is one more thing in not all the simple goiter is multinodular, some of the solitary nodules also. So there is a three subdivision: diffuse hyperplastic, multinodular goiter and solitary nodules. Now mostly the diffuse hyperplastic goiter is either physiological, puberty or pregnancy. That means either it is because of the primary deficiency of the iodine or related to the secondary iodine deficiency. So diffuse hyperplastic is again divided into physiological, pubertal and pregnancy. Now MNG we will discuss today MNG in detail. Now second thing is toxic goiters. Now toxic again, toxic can be diffuse can be toxic goiter also, which is mostly Graves' disease. हेलो ठीक. Now toxic divided into diffuse, multinodular and toxic adenoma. Toxic adenoma is solitary swelling. Third category is neoplastic. Neoplastic means either it can be benign or it can be malignant. And fourth is your inflammatory. Inflammatory can be autoimmune, granulomatous, fibrosing or infective. Now the most common autoimmune disease is Hashimoto thyroiditis. We will discuss detail in that thing. Now second is granulomatous, which is decoherent thyroiditis, and the important thing third is Reedus thyroiditis, which will also important. Now you can easily see the diffuse hyperplastic goiter. In a non-toxic goiter, first thing is diffuse and multinodular. You can easily appreciate the diffuse enlargement of the thyroid gland. There is no nodules in this. There is a diffuse thyroid gland enlarged. Now, in the next page, you can easily appreciate the nodules, the multiple nodules all over the gland. There is both the thing thyroid glands are also enlarged, and there is a formation of the multiple nodules. Again, I am showing this is a diffuse hyperplastic goiter in which whole thyroid gland is enlarged. Now, next thing, multinodular goiter in which multiple nodules are formed. Now today we will discuss MNG. So MNG, the name it spells multiple nodules in the thyroid. It is slowly progressive with the many years of the history. Progression from it is very obvious. It start from the diffuse hyperplastic to MNG. Now it's up to the 2 kg. Mostly it is euthyroid, and all the thyroid disease mostly common in the females. The MNG is the most common. Now MNG can be toxic or non-toxic both. First I will tell you the etiopathogenesis of nodules, multiple nodules or single nodule. Now what happened, normally either in puberty or in pregnancy, there is an increased demand of the both iodine and thyroid hormones. So if there is an increased demand, there is an increased level of TSH because it is directly related to the TSH. Now if there is a more TSH, and so because TSH increases and tell the thyroid to produce more thyroid, so what happened, normally the follicular cells, they will hypertrophied or hyperplastic. So there is the hypertrophy of the gland and hyperplasia of the gland. Both will form the physiological goiter. This is just because of the demand and deficiency. Now second thing is your endemic goiter. Now endemic goiter is because of the deficiency of the iodine. Now endemic goiter mostly occur in an area where the iodine depletion in soil only. So there is an area which is depletion in soil mostly away from the sea. You can see in this diagram in India there is a many area of endemic goiter like in central area which are away from the sea. These are the area where the endemic goiter is most common. Now next pathology is any disharmonigenesis. That means either it can be familial, autosomal recessive, or with deficiency of the both peroxidase enzymes or in a dehalogenase enzyme, resulting in a sporadic goiter. The sporadic means because of the deficiency of the goiter, not the soil thing. So peroxidase enzyme, which is important from the iodide to iodine formation, that is the role of this harmogenesis. Now next thing is your goitrogens. Now goitrogens such as a cabbage, drugs and many things. Next slide. So what is goitrogens? Goitrogens are the substance that will disrupt the production of the thyroid hormone. Or by interfering the iodine uptake in the thyroid gland. So in an environmental, there are many vegetables like cabbage, cauliflower, basil, and there is a cassava root, many milk products. These are the goitrogens. Now mostly the common drugs like iodides, amiodarone, cobalt, lithium, these are the drugs which is goitrogen. So what they do, they interfere with the production of the thyroid hormone. Now again the same thing I already told. Normally what happened, because of the iodine deficiency, there is an insufficient T3 T4 production in body, and because of the insufficient amount of T3 T4 production, there is a no inhibitory pathway. So hypothalamus again tell the anterior pituitary, and anterior pituitary again tell the thyroid to produce more and more thyroid. So very obvious thing, if the thyroid is trying to producing more and more thyroid hormone, they will all the cell will be grow, and it calls hyperplasia and both the hypertrophy. So ultimately, because of this compensatory mechanism, thyroid grows to form a goiter. So this is both for the multinodal goiter, simple goiter, or diffuse hyperplastic goiter. Now this is the pathophysiology. Pathogenesis of the goiter formation, again the same thing. Now the stimulation from the anterior pituitary TSH. We are the stimulation talking about the TSH stimulation. Because of the decreased T3 T4 in peripheral circulation, stimulation causes diffuse hyperplasia, a diffuse hyperplastic goiter. That means all the cells are active. Now this is the reversible stage. Initially it is reversible, very obvious if the correction is occurred by any treatment or self correction is occurred. So the hyperplastic goiter will the cells will be decreased, and that will be again in normal shape after a few years or few months. So but when the there is a persistence of T3 T4, low persistence of T3 T4, so continuous stimulation causes the mixed pattern with the area of active and inactive nodules. So what is the active and inactive nodules? Because of the continuous fluctuation in stimulation, that means because of the some correction, or because of treatment, or because patient himself take nutritional, if there is nutrition deficiency corrected, so there is a TSH stimulation fluctuation, that means corrected, and after some time again it's deficiency. So because of this thing, some of the cells are active, some of the cells are inactive. Active cells are very sensitive to TSH. That means whole the thyroid gland is not active at a time. Some of trying to make more T3 T4, they are active, and some of less sensitive, which is inactive lobules. So now the active lobules, because of the continuous T3 T4 reduction and the continuous stimulation of the TSH, active lobules become more vascular and more hyperplastic. They will try to form a more T3 T4 until the hemorrhage occur. They will trying and until hemorrhage occur, which is result in a central necrosis. Now these necrotic nodules combine to form a nodules, which are either filled with the iodine or colloid, or because sometimes there is no colloid, there is and they combine to form a mass, which is mostly inactive. Now continuation repetition of this process result in a multiple goiter. Now the same thing in a diagrammatic representation, you can easily see the from the decreased level of T3 T4, it tell the hypothalamus, from the hypothalamus they tell the anterior pituitary. Now anterior pituitary, because of the low T3 T4, it releases the TSH. Now you can see in the first diagram, this one, there is a because of continuation release of TSH, the whole thyroid gland hyperplastic. It was the initial reversible stage. So because of the reversible stage, the whole gland is enlarged. Now because of the fluctuation in TSH, there are multiple nodules are forming, which are some of the active, some are inactive. So if there is a persistence decrease in T3, T4, the nodules are formed, and from the multiple nodules are formed. It can also goes to the intrathoracic extension, that means from the lower part to upper part to lower part. Now you can see this diagram. This is the cells which are forming nodules. In between there is a hemorrhage formation. I already told the primary factors like familial goiter, genetic. This is already told. Now the pathology. As you can see in previous diagram, it is multilobated. Now the cut section has irregular nodules containing a multiple amount of colloids. After some regression, there is if the cut section is divided, there is an area of hemorrhage, fibrosis, calcification, and some of the cystitis also. Now the microscopically, follicles are varying in size. This is the microscopic feature. You can easily see the variable size and shape of the follicle. Some of the very large, some of very small. These are again coalesced to form the nodules. The same thing. Now the clinical features. So as it is nodules, that means it is a mass. So very obvious, most of the MNG are euthyroid. So the symptoms are just because of the effect of the mass or nodules. So you can see in this diagram. Now this light pinkish thing is your thyroid gland. This blue thing is your trachea, and this is your esophagus, which is very closely related to the thyroid gland. Now mass effect like dyspnea, dysphagia, hoarseness of voice, compression to the great vessel, superior vena cava. Now if the thyroid gland enlarged, very obvious, trachea is in between the thyroid gland, so it will compress and there is a difficulty in breathing, because other than trachea there is a laryngeal muscles also. So if there is a involvement of the any nerve, either a recurrent laryngeal nerve or superior laryngeal nerve, there is a hoarseness of voice. And if the thyroid gland is too enlarged, it will compress the esophagus, that will lead to the dysphagia. Now the most common symptoms also, it is a cosmetic effect. That means there is a enlarged swelling in the anterior aspect of the neck, which is now next thing is your mostly the all the multinodular goiter are euthyroid, may present with the hyperthyroidism after a long period. That means which will lead to the toxic MNG. Now the investigations. After clinical diagnosis, clinical examination, if there is a mass in the anterior aspect of the neck, after examination, if we find it is thyroid swelling, we have to further investigate the patient. First thing is your TFT. TFT is your thyroid function test, which will tell the either patient is euthyroid stage or hyperthyroidism stage or hypothyroidism stage. Now the next thing is your ultrasonography. In ultrasonography, you can easily identify the size of the nodule, shape of the nodule, consistency of the nodule, number of the nodules. So after the TFT and after the sonography, the next test is your fine needle aspiration cytology, which is also called FNAC, which is very diagnostic and very important test, especially in thyroid. FNAC can be done with the help of USG guided FNAC. I am audible? Hello? So after TFT and sonography, the third test is your FNAC. Now it is the investigation of choice in most of the thyroid disease. By FNAC, you can tell it is benign pathology or malignant pathology, or it is a for a malignancy. FNAC is not reliable at present only in a follicular carcinoma. Because of the that follicular carcinoma, there is an invasion of the capsule which is not done in a FNAC. So now next thing is your complete blood picture, in which many things in complete blood picture, both all the CBC, liver function, renal function, and sugar level, everything will be measured. Now the next important test is your X-ray neck, both the AP and lateral view. Now the X-ray neck will tell the two things for the thyroid itself, and second thing is about the trachea. So in a X-ray neck, you can also, if there is any calcification in thyroid nodule, you can say it is mostly the calcification occur in a malignancy only. But there is a two type of calcification. Either it is fine, if there is a fine calcification, that means it is malignancy. If there is a rough or coarse calcification, that means it is MNG. You can see the calcification in this photo. These are the calcification which is, and you can see the trachea also. In a trachea, we have to look for the any displacement or any compression of the trachea, because if there is a compression of a trachea, there is a tracheomalacia will occur, which is mostly occur in a long-standing MNG, which is also called as a if there is a trachea is compressed, that is a positive Coccus test. Now the next test is a CT scan. So obviously, if there are any investigation, we have to divide into blood test and radiological test. So in a CT scan, if there is any doubt in a X-ray or sonography, we have to go for CT scan, or if we want to look for the any retrosternal extension, because retrosternal when there is a formation of the nodules, multiple nodules, when it grows inside the thorax, inside the thoracic cavity, because it is very closely related to the neck, and there is a superior mediastinum which is related to the neck. So if there is a extension of the nodules which is goes in thoracic cavity, we cannot look in a sonography or X-ray. So we have to go for CT scan. Now the next important test is your thyroid scan, which is a radioisotope study. I will tell you about thyroid scan. So in this study, either we can use iodine 123 or technetium 99. In this study, we can look for the cold nodule, hot nodule. What is cold and what is hot nodule? You can appreciate in that photograph. In a hot, what happen normally? Once we give the that dye, that means once we give the either iodine or either technetium, normally it will uptake by the whole the thyroid gland. But in a, what happen in a hot nodules, because of the toxicity of the nodule, normal surrounding tissue is inactive. So only the overactive part of the nodules is taken the iodine, and it will look like this only. There is no normal thyroid gland, only the toxic part is taken up the dye. So this is hot nodule, which means which can easily say that it is a toxic. Now in second thing is the cold nodules. Cold means it is non-functioning nodules. in this thyroid gland taken the dye and not the nodules. So that means it is non-toxic. But the non-toxic nodules are chances of malignancy is high in non-toxic nodule. So that's why we did this test to look for the toxicity and for a malignancy. In this gland, all the dye will taken up by the nodules. That means there is a toxic multinodular goiter. Now the one more test is indirect laryngoscopy. Indirect laryngoscopy is just to look for the vocal cord mobility, because sometimes before the operation or because of the anything physiological or because any other related disease, there is a paralysis of the vocal cord, not because of the thyroid gland. Or this is indirect laryngoscopy very important to compare the patient after thyroidectomy, because sometimes in a surgery if there is an injury to the any nerve, so we can check after the surgery. So what are the complications of these nodules, all the multinodular or solitary nodules? Already explained, because of the compression effect, dyspnea, dysphagia. Now in a prolonged standing, there is a if there is a non-toxic goiter which can convert into the toxic goiter, which will lead to the thyrotoxicosis. Now the calcification of the nodules, degeneration of the nodules, hemorrhage into nodules, and malignant transformation and cosmetic disfigurement. These are the all complications of the multinodular goiter. Now the treatment part is already told in pathophysiology. In early stage of the hyperplastic goiter may regress if we corrected by the either thorexine with the in given doses 0.15 to 0.2 milligram daily for a few months, or till the T3 T4 will be coming to normal stage or TSH will be normal stage. Because although the nodular stage is irreversible, more than half of the benign nodules will regress in size over 1 year. Now most of the MNG are asymptomatic, other than a swelling. They do not require any operation, because if there is a small nodules, there is no toxicity or there is no compression effect, we will not do anything. We just wait for correction. We just give the correction with the thyrexine. Operation is indicated for the cosmetic grounds, for the pressure symptoms, or in response to the patient anxiety. But the retrosternal extension, if there is a small nodules which is extending to retrosternal, we have this is an indication for the thyroidectomy. Now the surgery, if there is an indication for surgery, is already told: cosmetic, pressure symptom, or toxicity. Before the surgery of thyroid surgery, if there is a patient is symptomatic, either hyperthyroidism or hypothyroidism, we have to correct that thing and make the patient in ethyroid state. Then only we go for surgery. In a surgery, when all the gland are hyperplastic, all the nodules are involved, the whole the gland, so we go for the total thyroidectomy. Second thing, there is a name of the operation: total, subtotal, partial, and partial is also known as a Harley-Dunn's operation. These are the operations depend upon the amount of the gland is involved or location of the gland is involved. So in a subtotal thyroidectomy, which is done in depending upon the which gland is involved and which location of the gland is involved. So in subtotal, we remove both the lateral lobes of the gland and just retain the approximately 8 gram of the thyroid, which is approximately thumb of the it's like in our thumb, which is approximately 8 gram, which is retained in each lateral lobe. On a partial thyroidectomy, one lateral lobe is fully excised Isthmus is also excised, but on the opposite side we have to retain the 8 gram of the thyroid tissue, which will help for the T3 T4 protection. So what happened in subtotal? In subtotal, we are just saving the that 8 gram, which is approximately our thumb size, to save the parathyroid gland. In a subtotal, we remove the both lateral lobes from right and left and just retain this part, and also we retain the stomach part. But in a partial, we remove whole the either involved in which the lobules or nodules are formed, that part is excised, and isthmus is also excised. Just we retain the upper part or lower part of the gland, which is approximately 8 gram. Now the reoperation for recurrent nodular goiter is more difficult, and because once we operate the thyroid gland, if they reopen the same thing, there is a fibrosis and there is a multiple adhesion found, so that it's very difficult to identify the other structure like nerves and vessels, which are very important in thyroid surgery. Now there is some evidence that radioactive iodine may reduce the size of the recurrent nodular goiter after subtotal resection, and in some circumstances it is safer alternative than reoperation. Now you have to just remember the name of the incision, which is Cocker's incision. Cockers did many things related to thyroid: Cocker's incision, Cocker test. Now the post-op, before the complication of surgery, there is a post-op complication of the surgery is obviously bleeding, infection, or nerve injury which cause temporary or permanent loss of the voice. Because of the damage to the parathyroid gland or excised parathyroid gland, we have look for the total or permanent hypocalcemia. Vocal cord paralysis, need for life. Important thing is, if we perform total thyroidotomy, we have to give lifelong supplement like a thyroxine, which is L-thyroxine, is levothyroxine. Now how will we prevent MNG? It is first correct the iodine deficiency by use iodinized salt. At puberty we have to give 0.1 mg to 0.2 mg of thyroxine, or reduces the use of the goitrogens. Now, if the patient come to your OPD or come to your ward with the thyroid mass, you have to take this is the flow chart for the how will we go for the plan or for the management or treatment of the MNG or solitary nodules. If the patient presented with the thyroid mass, we have to take proper history and examine, and after the basic investigation, all FNAC, USG, we can look either it is solitary or diffuse. If it is a multinodular goiter, now already explained everything: thyroid function, T3, T4 antibodies, mass effect, and nodular pathology. If thyroid functions, after the thyroid function, which is either euthyroid, we have to again look for the antibodies, which is important for the autoimmune disease. Now if the TFT is normal, but if TFT is not normal, that means either thyrotoxicosis features are there, we have to go for a surgery or radioablation. Because of the any mass effect, again if symptomatic patient, we go for surgery. If there is no symptom, we can wait and we can observe. After the pathology test, means after the FNAC, if it is benign, again we can wait. If there is suspicious of malignancy, we can go for surgery. If there is a malignant definitely go for surgery. If there is a non-diagnostic, that means inconclusive report, again we have to repeat the FNSC at least for 3 times. So now we this is the about the MNG. Now we can quickly tell about now the second topic is your solitary nodule. We just talked about the MNG. Both the pathophysiology and etiology is same for the MNG and solitary nodules, but the important things for solitary nodules, the name itself, solitary, means it is single nodules. Now what is solitary nodules? If there is only a nodules palpable by palpation method without any palpation of the remaining gland, that is your solitary isolated nodules. Generally, in general population, thyroid nodules are palpate only in a 3 to 7%. Rest of the we find in the ultrasonography. Because it is very small, we can not palpable by the palpatory method. Maximum time it is an incidental finding, that means 20 to 76% is found in ultrasonography only. Palpable thyroid nodules in 5% in women and 1% in men. Importance of solitary thyroid nodules is max 5 to 15% of them are malignant. That is why it is important, because in MNG, because it is MNG because of deficiency of the iodine, but here it is not because of deficiency of iodine. There are many other causative factors. So 15% of them are malignant. Prevalence increases directly with the age and exposure of the radiation and iodine deficiency. Now, what are the risk factors? I already told, because solitary nodules is important just because of it is very highly chances of turning into malignancy. So what are the risk factor for malignancy of solitary nodule? It is a bimodal, that means either less than a 20 year or more than a 70 year. Now, like other thyroid swelling goiter, which is mostly common in females, but the single solitary nodule, which is chances of malignancy most common in males. And the causative factor is radiation. Radiation either because of any therapy for anything like leukemia, lymphemia in childhood, or because of the CT exposure or MRI exposure, that all radiation will give to chances of malignancy is more in this. Now the examination part we will discuss. Now these are the risk factors for malignancy. Now how will be a factor suggesting the nodules are not malignant? This is a benign. First thing, we have to look for all the T3, T4 and all the antibodies and all the TPO and everything, so we can diagnose if there is any inflammatory pathology like Hashimoto disease. And basic, this is a simple thing I already explained in MNG. All the tests, your sonography and FNSC, this all are diagnostic tests. Now the etiology for benign nodules, again the same thing, dominant nodule of the any MNG which is present as a solitary nodules, autonomous toxic nodules, colloid goiter can convert into malignancy, pulmonary disease, Hashimoto thyroiditis, simple hemorrhagic cyst, follicular adenoma. So these are the benign pathology of the solitary single nodules. Now the solitary single nodule can be malignant. We will discuss malignancy part later on, both the primary and secondary. Now again the management. of the solitary nodule, proper history, proper examination, the complete investigation and plan for treatment. The same thing, factor suggesting malignancy in examination. If there is a size of the nodules more than 3 centimeter, it is a hard or irregular surface, or it is fixed with lymphadenopathy. Anything in the body, if lump is very other than thyroid also, if there is any breast swelling, thigh swelling, abdomen swelling, anywhere, if the lump is hard or irregular surface, or it is fixed, or if there is a present of lymphadenopathy other than regional lymphadenopathy, chances of malignancy is more. The same thing in thyroid also. Factor suggesting benign nodule. Benign nodules are either it can be painful or it can be painless, tender present or tenderness not present. The benign nodules are soft, smooth and it is mobile. Now the investigation already explained in previous topic. The same thing, TFT, TSH, T3, T4. The important thing is the free T3 and free T4 is more reliable to tell the hyper or hypothyroidism. Now why we do TFT? Again the same thing, either it is hyperthyroidism, hypothyroidism, or it can be euthyroid. The same thing in now if there is a hyperthyroidism, we go for a again further test, right? Radionuclide scan. If there is a hypothyroidism, you must look for the all the antibodies like antithyroglobulin, antiperoxidase, to exclude the autoimmune disease, Hashimoto thyroiditis. After the TFT, after the sonography, we have to go for FNAC, the same thing. These tests are serum calcitonin, serum calcium. These are for the to rule out the malignancy and hypokalemia and parathyroid disease. Now the imaging test, radionuclide scan, already explained what is the role of hot nodule. The cold nodule, which is mostly non-functioning, the chances of malignancy is 5 to 10%. In a hot nodule, which is functioning nodule, which is toxic nodule, which is 10%, the cancer is only 1%. The importance of radionuclide scan, it can reveal the retrosternal extension. Same test, CT, MRI, to look for the better. PET scan. PET scan is an important scan using a FDG dye. It is to look for the, it is a differentiate from the benign and malignant thing. If the PET scan dye is uptake, that means it is a malignancy. It is a highly expensive test, so it is not it can not replace the biopsy. So if you want to confirm the malignancy, go for a FNAC or go for a biopsy rather than a PET scan. Again, the treatment plan is same for the solitary nodules also. We have to first correct the hypothyroidism to make a patient in euthyroid stage by the levothyroxine. If there is any side effect symptom, go for a surgery. If there is a toxic nodule, correct the toxicity, then go for a surgery. If there is pressure symptom, go for a surgery. If in FNAC, if there is a malignancy is present, go for a surgery. So today's topic is over. In the next class we will discuss about hypo or hypothyroidism.